Am I not here, I who am your mother? Are you not under my shadow and protection? Am I not the source of your joy? Are you not in the hollow of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Do you need anything more? The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have one of these books. And this is Mary's Mantle Consecration, a spiritual retreat for heaven's help. Another book that's very well recommended is this Mary Mantle's Consecration Journal. So we recommend it if you do want to get a little deeper into each of the meditations on a daily basis. Today, both presenters, Deacon David Leatherby and the author Christine Watkins, will share a bit of their background. Each of them have an incredible story of how they converted to their Catholic faith. Christine's story, along with 5 other incredible stories, are in her first book, Full of Grace. Miraculous stories of healing and conversion through Mary's intercession. Deacon Dave's story is in this book, Of Men and Mary. This book has been reviewed by many, and if you all know the surfer priest, Father Donald Calloway, he calls this book anointed. So you might want to check that out. One of the reviews on Of Men and Mary that was on Amazon said, "This is a wonderful book. Reading this has inspired me to begin my own journey home after 36 years in the wilderness. I heard the call of Our Lady in these stories." If you still need these books or any of the other titles, you can go online to www.queenofpeacemedia.com.
So thank you so much for hearing Our Lady's call and coming this evening. It's such a joy to see you here. St. Louis de Montfort, who wrote the seminal work about Marian consecration called True Devotion to Mary, said that Marian consecration is the surest, easiest, and most perfect means to become a saint. Now you might be thinking, that's kind of lofty. You know, I came here tonight because my friend invited me, and I figured that the Catholic Church might have some donuts lying around. But I assure you that there's a deeper reason why you're watching this video or why you are here. For your entire life, our Lord and Our Lady have been guiding you. It is no mistake that you're watching this. It is not by chance that you're here. And they have been guiding you because they have one goal in mind that I'm going to be talking about. Now, this is a very special invitation that you're receiving, but it's not one that's magic. It requires your participation. And if you participate with your whole heart, 46 days from now, you're not going to be the same person that you are right now today. As you enter into this consecration, try to give your whole self to it. You will discover, I guarantee you, more and more of who you really are. Now, if someone were to come up to you today and say, "Who are you? Who are you really?" What would you say to them? Would you mention your profession? Would you mention your personal relationships, your hobbies, things you love? Would you mention your deficits? You know, some of us are very self-deprecating and think, well, I'm a depressed mom who loves ice cream. Or some of us are a little bit inflated and might say, hey, I'm someone with a heck of a six-pack. But is that who you really are? If someone came up to you and said, what is the goal of your life? What would you say? Would you say, well, I want to make money, or I'd like to get a house, or I'd like to get married, or, I'd really like to be healthy, I'd like to look good, I'd like to get this certain thing that I've always wanted, be successful. Or maybe your goal is to simply get through the day without breaking down or going broke. What is your goal in life? The truth of who you are is much more glorious than you can possibly imagine. A priest friend of mine once said, "If we could but see the beauty of just one human soul, we would weep with joy and wonder." God created you out of his perfect love. He was so excited when he created you. It gave him so much joy. He enjoyed thinking about who you'd be, what your hair color was, your eye color, your personality, the things you'd love, the things you'd hate. He delighted in creating you. And he created you in his very own image. Think about that. That means that the entire kingdom of God is within you. You are an absolute miracle. There has never been anyone like you walking the earth before today, and in the future there will never again be a creation just like you. You are an entirely unique and beautiful gift to this world. And what is your goal of being here? God has a goal for you. And what is his goal? His goal for you is to become like Jesus Christ. That is why you were born. That is why you are here. You know, I didn't know why I was here or what the point of my life was. To tell you a bit of my story, I was raised in an anti-Christian and anti-Catholic family, and growing up, I perfected the fine art of worrying. Do any of you have that skill? And it was hard for me to find happiness, but I did find joy in one thing, and it was ballet. And I practiced it diligently for years, and I ended up dancing with the San Francisco Ballet Company. I loved everything about it, the musicality, the physicality. Nowadays, exercise brings out the quitter in me, but back then I could really jump. And I ended up getting injured. I had 3 foot operations, and this took away my career. But not just my career. It took away the only God I ever knew. Because we all have a God-shaped hole in us. If it's not filled by God, we're going to fill it with something else that we cling to. And for me, it was dance. And when that was taken away, I grew depressed, and I lost hope. And I turned to intimate relationships for comfort. And I fell deeper and deeper and deeper into very, very serious sin. I felt temporarily filled with some kind of life when I was in a relationship, but when that relationship inevitably failed, I was left with this larger, empty, lonely hole inside of me. And I was always looking outside myself for someone or something to bring me inner peace. But there was no inner peace for me because sin takes away our peace. There is no peace with sin. And I didn't think once to change my behavior, not even once. And one summer I ended up very, very sick. It turns out I had cervical cancer and very little time left to live. My hair was falling out. I was bleeding internally. I couldn't keep food down. I didn't have enough energy even to walk across the street. But worse than being so very sick inside my body, I was sick inside my soul. At times I would just cry out in guttural despair, and when the tears started, they wouldn't stop. It was like a floodgate. I was turning to the New Age movement for answers because I wanted nothing to do with Jesus and Mary. But the New Age would offer me nirvana. It would hand out a carrot, and then it would disappear. And I was left with nothing. One summer, I was so sick, and my friend was praying for me, Joseph. He was Catholic. I didn't know that. He was praying for me. I didn't care. I didn't know what prayer was. Prayer was a foreign word. And I felt this beautiful presence around me and within me, a presence of ecstatic peace. And I heard a loud pop inside of my body. And I said, Joseph, what was that? I felt so joyful, so healthy, so expansive. And I heard this pop. I said, what just happened to me? And he said, Christine, I was in prayer just now. And Mother Mary came. And she looked down upon you from heaven. She took pity on you. And she asked her son to save you. It turns out the cancer was gone. I was given my life and my soul back in 1 second. And I now know where mortal sin leads, and I never want to go there again. And my life isn't my life, it's God's life. And it was God's life all along. And being a Catholic Christian, it means everything to me. It means the difference between life and death. My life is just one of millions of examples where Mary intervenes and wonderful things happen. In the next 46 days, you can expect the Mother of God to be by your side. You can expect her to intercede for you night and day and beyond. This consecration is not just a Marian consecration. Hence, it is extremely powerful. It is extremely powerful because we're doing 4 things that cause grace to rain down from heaven. The first thing we're going to do is pray the rosary every day. And the rosary alone can work miracles in our lives. Deacon Dave is going to do another talk and another video on the rosary. And even for those who have prayed it your whole life, I assure you, you're going to learn some new and wonderful things. The second thing we're going to do is fast. Please don't run out of here screaming. Fasting is an incredible tool, and I invite you to read more about it in the introductory pages of the Mary's Mantle Consecration book. It is an incredible tool of transformation. You're going to be assigned a fast day. You will be called a star on Our Lady of Guadalupe's mantle. And on that day, everyone in your parish who signed up is going to be praying for you, your loved ones, your intentions, and your collective prayer intention for your parish. You will be the star that day. A deacon's wife who went through this program, she said the second time around that she did the consecration and brought it to her parish, she loved it so much. She said on her fast day, she was walking on air. Now, I assure you that that doesn't always happen on your fast day. Even if you feel like you're crawling through a swamp on your fast day, you are receiving incredible graces. You can just count on it. The third thing you're going to do is spiritual reading. This is people's favorite part of this devotion of the retreat, because every day you're going to read about a virtue or a gift of the Holy Spirit, and you're going to try to incorporate that more into your life. And the importance of this cannot be emphasized more. St. Gregory of Nyssa said, the goal of a virtuous life is to be like God. I cannot stress spiritual reading enough and the importance of it. St. Padre Pio said, the harm that comes to souls for the lack of spiritual reading holy books, makes me shudder. The power spiritual reading has to change one's course in life and move worldly people into the way of the path of perfection is amazing. This is so important that you read about the virtues and try to incorporate them in your life. The other thing that is so transformative is before your act of consecration, you're going to go to the sacrament of reconciliation. And of course, I can't say enough about that, and we'll do so in another video talk. And Jesus told Saint Faustina Kowalska, the Saint of Divine Mercy, in confession, the greatest miracles take place and are incessantly repeated. So if that's not enough for you, you can take, if you have it, the Mary's Mantle Prayer Journal, and you can open it up to the day that you're on, and the first thing you do is take a deep breath. How many of you are like me and you forget to breathe? Okay, I don't know if I breathe, to be honest with you. I love that moment of taking a moment, taking a deep breath, closing your eyes, and then you ask for a grace or you say a prayer of thanksgiving. And when you do this, you focus on God with 100% of your concentration. And even for those of us who've prayed for many years, you might find how rare it is that you give God 100% of your attention. And that is the point of that breath, to be with Him alone fully. And then you can answer a question or two about your soul and your life regarding the virtue or gift. Read a scripture passage pertaining to it. And then my favorite part, read a quote from a saint. And if you like to journal, then there's space for that as well. And in the talks that will come up, the other video talks, Deacon Dave will give one talk and I will give the next. And we're going to speak about Mary. We're going to talk about fasting. We're going to talk about how hard it is to live some virtues. We're going to talk about some stories of incredible virtue. We'll talk about the sacrament of confession or reconciliation and how to go forward living this consecration in our daily lives. You can do this as an individual. You can do this spiritual retreat as a family, as a couple. And if you have little kids, we have available a big, exciting poster that the kids can color in of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and they can add the stars every day. So the whole family can be included. It is so beautiful, so wonderful to have all of us praying for each other. We will be holding each other up during the 46 days. We will not be alone, and graces will flow. One woman who went through this, she offered the whole thing up for her alcoholic husband, who was also verbally abusive. And by the end of the 46 days, he got down on his knees, apologized to her and the children, started to go to Mass with them, and has stopped drinking ever since. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone and Bishop Myron J Cotta have endorsed this devotion, this consecration, and I truly pray that it is fruitful for you beyond your expectations. And now I would like to introduce you to Deacon Dave Leatherby, who will share with us a bit more about the meaning of Marian consecration. And he's going to do a wonderful job.
Now I'm nervous. I'm going to just tell a little bit about my background. So those of you who know me, you can sleep for a little bit. I have a wonderful life. It's the most blessed life. And I can tell you that every good thing that has ever come to me in my life is through the Blessed Virgin Mary. All right. I lived a life as a Catholic. My dad, family converted. They had 5 kids. We were all baptized on the same day, and then they became really good Catholics and had 5 more kids. So I have 10 in my family, but it's amazing. I grew up and I didn't really know my faith. We were poor, as you can imagine, with 10 kids. And so my goals in life, I was embarrassed because of the clothes I wore. I was, the lunches I brought, I couldn't go skiing because we didn't have any money to go skiing. All my friends were taking off. I get to high school, they all have cars and doing things. So you can imagine there was a pain in me, and my goals were worldly goals. So as I got older, if someone asked me, do you have faith? Oh, yes. Is God important? Oh, yes. But really making money, having a really good-looking wife, perfect kids, a nice house, a good car, the best job, being respected, all of those things were so important to me, and I never realized that they had become idols to me. They were my gods. But I didn't know it, and I didn't see it. You know, I just lived my life. I went to church on Sunday, prayed sometimes, but my life was a very worldly life. And at a certain point, I had all kinds of troubles in my life, and I lost everything. I mean, everything. Businesses, job, reputation, 30 lawsuits, name in the paper almost every day, being sued for fraud. We had all these franchises in 6 different states. I was sued under the RICO Act, as if I'm a racketeer, right? Anyway, it was terrible. And I thought, boy, at least I have my wife and family, and I have my health, and then all of a sudden, I get injured and I lose my health. I had to alter my life. And I kept saying, oh, boy, I've lost everything. I'm in court all the time. I filed bankruptcy. We lost our home. We're living in a cheap apartment with my kids, nowhere for their bikes. It was terrible. And then I thought, I have my family. And my wife came to me and said, you're no fun. I don't want to be married to you anymore. You're unhappy. You're miserable. I don't want to be around you anymore. And so all of a sudden, I had lost everything. No job, no money in the bank, no house, no nothing. And so what it did to me, all of a sudden inside a darkness started growing, and I became bitter. But I never showed anybody. You know, I always tried to be kind and good and a good salesman, and I tried to earn the money back, and I got another good job and began working. But inside there was a darkness, a sadness, a bitterness. I didn't trust people. I didn't really like people. I was angry at my family. I was angry at the people who sued me. I was angry at the world. I was angry at my wife. So it was a tough time. But if you looked at me, even though I was not living at home for a while, I finally got a job, bought a house for my family, began making money again, and moved back in, and it was real tentative. And what's interesting is I encountered a man who had been an alcoholic and had left his family, and he was drinking all the time, and he was womanizing. I'd see him I'd go for a beer after work on Friday. He'd have been in there all day long, sitting there. Well, I see him after a period of time, and the man was so changed that I couldn't recognize him. We were at a kids' swim meet, and he comes up to me, and he said, "Hi, Dave." And I looked at him, and I didn't know who he was, and I put my hand out. You know how somebody looks kind of familiar, and you're hoping, that the recognition's going to come? I put my hand out, and all of a sudden, I realized who it was, and I said, "You look so different." He looked 20 years younger. He had this radiance, this glow about him. He was happy and content and peaceful. He was so different than I had seen him before. And I said, "What did you do? You look great." I went on a pilgrimage. I said, "A pilgrimage like religious?" "Yeah, like what religion are you?" He goes, "Oh, well, I'm a Catholic like you." I didn't even know he was, right? And he said, I went on this pilgrimage and it changed my life. It's a place where it's a shrine to Our Lady. And he began telling me about it, and I started thinking, oh, this guy's a kook. He's a religious kook. He's a fanatic. And, the warning signs go off, and I started taking steps backwards. So anyway, ultimately, I kept thinking of that guy's face all week long, and I wanted to see him, and I did see him the next weekend at the swim meet. And I said, tell me about this place. He did, and something happened. I had this desire to go, this tremendous desire. I wanted to find out if it was true, because I saw something in him that he wasn't making up. So I did. I went, and it changed my life. And I'm not going to talk about all that tonight. But what I am going to tell you is that on the way home, I prayed a prayer. Dear Lord, I'm not trying to offend you by worshiping the Blessed Virgin Mary. You know, I have those Protestant fears. I don't think she's a god, and I don't want to offend you, but dear Lord, I'm different. Please don't make me a religious fanatic. So, because I knew I was different. Anyway, I came home, and I did something. I began reading, and I read the lives of the saints, and in every life of the saint, I encountered one thing. I mean, I encountered a lot of similarities, of course, in the saints, right? But there was one thing. They all had this tremendous devotion to Mary. She'd spoken to them. She appeared to them. They consecrated their religious order to her, on and on and on. Just, it was amazing, and I never had realized that. And so one day I was in church, and I saw a pamphlet laying in front of me, and it said, Pope John Paul consecrates himself and the world to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Right? And I began reading, and it said his motto, the motto on his papal crest is totus tuus, right? And they explained it in this article I was reading. It meant totally yours, Mary. Totally yours, Mary. There's the cross on his papal crest, and then there's an M down below it. Mary kneeling at the foot of the cross. And I began reading, and it said John Paul II read that book by St. Louis de Montfort as a seminarian and carried it around for years and years and read it over and over because he realized there was something profound. St. Louis de Montfort says that a devotion to Mary, when God reveals it to your heart, he is revealing one of his greatest secrets. And you can't receive it unless you have suffered, or unless, for some reason, you have this deep longing, a desire to know him. You can't receive this grace because it's a grace for children, for those with simple minds. People that are high up, brilliant, smart people, they look at a devotion to Mary, and what do they think? That's kind of silly, it's sentimental. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I understand, but you know, my theology is different. But you know what? God reserves this knowledge of this devotion to Mary for people, well, you know yourself. You know why you're here. There's something in you that brought you here. So this devotion to Mary, John Paul II talked about this consecration, consecrating his life to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And I thought, my Protestant fears, why aren't you consecrating yourself to Jesus? You know, you can ask Our Lady to pray for you. But then I read the book, True Devotion. And I did it. I made the consecration. And I realized something. What is this consecration? Why do we use the word consecration? Because we give our life. Just like you consecrate a chalice for use in the Mass, right? You consecrate a church. You bless this church, right? For holy things. What are you saying? I'm consecrating myself for a purpose. I want you, Mary, to form me to be like Jesus. Jesus, the perfect man. So our goal as Christians, we have one goal, and it's to be united to Jesus Christ. And the way we become united to him is to be formed in his image, to become more and more and more like him. Because then God can dwell in us in a greater and greater and greater way. So, what did I do? I decided I'm going to consecrate myself. I did 33-day prayer. We're doing a nice one, 46 days. But the ultimate goal is the same. And so when I gave myself to Mary, I read that you don't just consecrate yourself, you consecrate your entire self, your mind, your heart, your soul, your spirit, everything, your body, you give to Mary. And that scared me a little bit. I thought, well, am I giving too much to Mary and not enough to God? And then it scared me too, because what if I want, also you give all your prayers and all your merits and all your sacrifices and sufferings. You give her everything, and she dispenses it for you as it's needed in the world. And I thought, well, what if I want to pray for my children? Or what if I have a friend? Or what? And I didn't realize that when you make a consecration to her, that she knows better than you do what's needed in your family and in your life. And so all of a sudden, it became easy. It was a relief. Even now as a deacon, I have many people come up, "Deacon, will you pray for me for this? I'm having trouble with my family. My husband's sick. My children are away from the faith. I have all these things." Do you know what I do immediately? I immediately say, "Our Lady, I give them to you." Every time, "Our Lady, you have to help me pray for them. Bring them to mind, but I give them to you. You use my prayers as needed." And I've seen miracles. But one other thing I did, I consecrated my family to the Blessed Virgin Mary, my children and my wife. And when I got back from this pilgrimage, I was kind of tentative with my wife. And guess what she thought about having a religious husband who started wearing medals and going to Mass every day and reading saint books? She was freaked out. My wife thought, "Oh my gosh, my husband, he's an embarrassment. People are going to think we're crazy," and all this. And pretty soon, when I thought it was bad before, it got worse. It got so terrible with my wife. My wife, who is the most loving, gentle, kind, beautiful person, became a little wicked witch. Okay? With a heart of stone, I'm telling you. And she made me suffer, and, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and I gave her to Our Lady, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't working. And it got worse and worse, and pretty soon I think, you know what? There's no hope. I had zero hope. I went one day into my closet so nobody would see me, and I started crying, and I said, "Lord, I've done everything I know. I've given my life to you. I consecrated my children to Our Lady. I pray every day, and it's worse than ever." And I said, so finally I said, "Lord, maybe you want me divorced. Maybe I have to do that to atone for my sins. I have to live a life alone." And so in my mind, I thought, I'm going to go to my wife, and I'm going to give her divorce papers, and I'm going to have them signed. And I'm going to say, "I will be your husband the rest of your life. Or the rest of my life. I will never marry again. I will give you all the money I ever make. I will support you. I will be faithful, but I'm going to give you your freedom because I make you so miserable." I didn't see any hope. So the day that I was to go pick up the divorce papers, I'm at work, and I have a heavy heart, and I don't want to pick the phone up. I don't want to work. I'm just feeling sick. It's a sadness, you can imagine, losing your family. And the phone rings, and I don't answer it. And then the secretary, she calls over the loudspeaker, "Dave Leatherby, phone call." And I said, "Please take a message." This guy's really insistent. I said, "Please take a message. It's a bad day." Pretty soon, "Dave Leatherby, phone call." And I said, "Please take a message." And she says, "That same guy." And I said, "No, I don't want to talk to him." Third time. Pretty soon I'm irritated. And I pick up the phone, and I didn't even know who it was, and I pick it up, and I'm talking to him, and I'm a little bit irritated. And I said, "This is not a good time. I asked to take a message. What's the issue?" And he goes, "I need to meet with you this morning." And this was a man that I'd only met a few times. I didn't know him very well. So I said, "It's not a good day. I'll meet you some other time." He goes, "No, I need to meet you this morning." And I said, "Why are you so insistent?" He goes, "Well, I have a message for you." "A message?" He goes, "Yeah, that little prayer group that you attended a couple times? It's a little rosary group with these young adults. And I had been invited to go, and there were some young girls there who had special gifts." So anyway, I go. I tell the guy, "Okay, you're going to have to tell me what this is about, or I'm not going to meet you." And he goes, "Well, one of those young girls has a special gift from God. She hears Our Lady's voice. It's called a locution. And she was awakened in the middle of the night. And she has a message for you." And I remember thinking, this is weird. Sacramento, we have this happening. I know miracles happen in other places, but here? So anyway, I said, I'll meet you at the park where nobody could see us. And I did, and he walks up and he has a little white envelope. And the white envelope, he hands it to me, and I said, tell me again. And he explained this young girl, 21 years old, about that she was awake in the middle of the night. And I said, awakened by the Blessed Virgin Mary. She hears Our Lady. So I'm a little bit hesitant to open this envelope. I open it up. And I want to tell you, it was so amazing. Does a consecration to the Blessed Virgin mean something? Is it important? So I start reading. My dearest son, heaven has seen your sufferings. And it went on to tell me, God does not wish my family to be divided. God has chosen. Gosh, how many times? I told this story many times. I still get choked up. But anyway, it went on to tell me things that only I knew that she couldn't have known. I don't even know this girl. Be patient. Trust. Abandon yourself. God will take care of this. And you're under my mantle, Our Lady. So guess what? All of a sudden, my life changed. Things began to happen. It's too long a story. I'll tell you some other time. But it was the most amazing thing. My wife had a tremendous conversion. Tremendous conversion. Miracles happened. Today, that wicked witch has flown past me in the spiritual life. She's my best friend. She's a great mother. She's saintly. And my family, what's amazing is God took my family and he changed it. We were off on, my son, Father Jeremy, the priest, he wanted to be a rich businessman and drive a red Ferrari. That was his goal. I get a call from college and it's him. He says, Dad, don't pay my tuition next year. I said, why'd you get kicked out for drinking or something? He said, no, Dad, I was praying in front of the grotto, an imitation Lourdes grotto at Notre Dame. I was praying in front of the grotto and I felt Our Lady come to me. I'm supposed to be a priest. You guys, this devotion to Our Lady is wonderful. When you make this consecration, she has and if you've already made the consecration, you can renew the consecration. You don't have to worry about that. But what she does is now she has a special obligation for you. You've given yourself to her, and now she has a special obligation. I was afraid to make a consecration to Mary because I didn't know, there's so little about her in the scriptures, right? Wrong. The scriptures cry of Mary. For Jesus' first 3 miracles, you know why he worked them? The first one he worked when Our Lady said yes to God, to the angel Gabriel. And the miracle of the incarnation came because she said yes. The next miracle was a miracle of grace when she went to Elizabeth's house. And it says, at the sound of Mary's voice, Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit, and St. John the Baptist was purified in the womb. Jesus said he's the greatest man ever born of woman because he was perfected in the womb, right? Second miracle of grace. Third miracle, Mary comes and says, son, they have no more wine, right? He changes water to wine. So is Our Lady a powerful intercessor? Yes. When you give yourself to her, what does she do? She takes our measly little prayers and sacrifices and sufferings and complaints, and she sorts out the complaints and she prepares it and she gives it to God and she presents it to him with her tears and her love. Okay, in the Old Testament, you remember this, where all the Old Testament prefigures what was going to come later. Do we all know that? The Old Testament prefigures Jesus and the church and Mary. Okay? And so what they call these things, if you remember the 2 disciples walking on the road to Emmaus, and Jesus comes up And he begins walking, but they don't recognize him. And he begins explaining the scriptures to them, how the scriptures spoke about him, right? And so what happens, the Old Testament does this. But does the Old Testament talk about Mary? I want to give you one example. Okay, do you know who Isaac was? Right? He's the guy that Abraham was going to kill, right? Well, Isaac's now an old man. He's an old man and he's bedridden, and he has 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. And he has these 2 sons, and he has a wife, Rebekah. And one of his sons, Esau, is a worldly man, big, hairy, strong, kills gorillas, kills animals. The guy's amazing, but he's worldly. And he has another son named Jacob, who is gentle and kind and loving and faithful. He has these 2 sons. Which son is entitled to the father's blessing? The oldest son, always, right? He is going to receive, the oldest son will receive everything of the father. His blessing, his inheritance, his authority, his everything. Well, what does Rebekah do? Okay, think of Our Lady. Rebekah takes her second son, and she dresses him, and she says, go get something. And he brings a rabbit or a lamb or something, and she takes his offering and she prepares it so that it's acceptable to Isaac the father, who's in bed, who's blind, who's dying, and he's ready to give the blessing. She knows this, and so she prepares this meal from what he brought. Like Our Lady takes all of our things and prepares them. And then what does she do? She knows that the father will know it's not his big hairy son, so she takes the skin off the lambs and puts it on his arms. So what's he feel like? Hairy. Feels like the older son. And then she takes the older son's coat and she covers him in the garments of the older son. And when he goes into the father with this food prepared by the mother, he smells it. He smells the son, and he smells his older son, and he feels him, and he feels his older son, and he gives the second son the blessing. How many children does God have? He has one son. Who deserves the inheritance? Jesus only. Do we? None of us do. But what is Mary's role? Take our meager offerings, clothe us in the garment of Jesus, right? Make us look like him, smell like him, form us in his image, so that then God lives in us and he sees his only son in us. We become one body with Jesus. That's Mary's role for all eternity, and God never changes. Isn't that a neat story? There are dozens of stories in the Old Testament like that. This consecration to Mary is a most wonderful thing. I'm going to end with a quick story. My dad went to the hospital a couple days ago. He had a blood infection and he collapsed and all his major organs were shutting down. He almost died and he's still not out. And so I spent the night with him. He's been in the hospital now. This is his 3rd day. And he's really tentative. He's just up and down, and they're having problems with his heart and his breathing and his blood pressure. So he's laying there and he can't talk real well. And anyway, all of his 10 kids are coming in, and the grandkids, and everybody sits there and they let him sleep, and they pray, and they're sitting around, and the nurses are watching this. Okay? So anyway, they got to stick my dad with all those things, right? So they go over and they lift the covers up, lift his hand up, and he's got a rosary in his hand. And the nurse goes, here, we have to stick you. Here, let me hold that. And my dad goes, no. And she goes, no, it'll be just for a minute. I'll give it right back. No. He wouldn't let go of the rosary. So anyway, yesterday morning, the nurse, or yesterday afternoon, I think, the nurse comes and the nurse says, I've just been really amazed at your family. You know, he must be a wonderful dad. The family comes and they pray. And a lot of times when older people are here, nobody comes or very few. And, it's packed. It's out in the hallway. And she looks at my dad and she goes, you must be a wonderful dad. what did you do? And he goes, holds up the rosary. So, I am here to encourage you to every day that we do this, invite Our Lady to come and pray with you and to bring the Holy Spirit, her spouse. And if you do that every day, she will come. I promise you. Some of you may hear her. Some of you may feel her presence, but I promise she will come and she will teach you how to be like Jesus. Amen.
Antes de venir como el justo juez, vengo como el Rey de misericordia. Antes de que llegue el día de la justicia, les será dado a los hombres este signo en el cielo. Se apagará toda luz en el cielo y habrá una gran oscuridad en toda la tierra. Entonces, en el cielo, aparecerá el signo de la cruz y de los orificios donde fueron clavadas las manos y los pies del Salvador. Saldrán grandes luces que durante algún tiempo iluminarán la tierra. Esto sucederá poco tiempo antes del último día. Mi llama de amor está quemando. Es tan grande que no la puedo mantener por más tiempo dentro de mí. Salta hacia ti con poder explosivo. Cuando se derrame, mi amor destruirá el odio satánico que contamina el mundo. El mayor número de almas serán liberadas. Nada como esto ha existido antes. Este es el milagro más grande que haré por todos.